From the creators of the popular science show with millions of YouTube subscribers comes the Minute Earth podcast. Every episode of the show dives deep into a science question you might not even know you had. But once you hear the answer, you'll want to share it with everyone you know. Why do rivers curve? Why did the T-Rex have such tiny arms? And why do so many more kids need glasses now than they used to? Spoiler alert, it isn't screen time. Our team of scientists digs into the research and breaks it down into a short, entertaining explanation, jam-packed with science facts and terrible puns. Subscribe to Minute Earth wherever you like to listen.
Hello, everyone. Gabby here.
And I'm Steven Stakui. Hi, I'm back again.
And welcome back to the Mystery of Everything podcast. Guys, I know, Brenna and I know, but I'm currently in Switzerland. So this is...
And Brenna is not.
Right. And we could record online, but it's like a 6-hour time difference. So not ideal.
Not to mention, what did we have to do in order to get access to internet today, Gabby?
Oh, yeah. So we booked like an Airbnb and it had no Wi-Fi. So Steven had to go out and get like a Wi-Fi Go portable like Wi-Fi package.
She's not even telling the complete story of it. We get off the airplane. We are exhausted because we barely slept on the plane in and of itself. We then go and take a taxi, get all the way into town and because we're in Zurich and we are like, all right, we're going to rest. We get in, realize there's no Wi-Fi. Where do we get Wi-Fi? Oh, it's from this place. You can just go to their store. Awesome. Where's their store? It's back at the airport.
Yeah.
So then I have to make my way back to the airport, get it back here. And then we then spent the next half an hour trying to figure out how to get it to work. And then as it turns out, I just wasn't turning it on the entire time.
It happens to the best of us, really. But yeah, and I don't think this little Wi-Fi battery pack can actually FaceTime Brenna, Discord call her to record. So we're just going to have to roll with it, but we're taking the month of January off from like all travel to catch up and to get ahead. So podcast should be back to normal. But in my last episode, I did establish a series on cults. And this episode is going to cover one of the lesser known cults. If you like, it's covering a topic that is associated with a cult. You'll see what I mean.
It gets really messy. And I think that's what I appreciate about the mystery, because there's a lot more questionability, I guess, about it, at least from the stuff that you've been telling me, because I've been working on a whole thing for Botswana because I do history. And I'm just hearing, oh my God, Steven, oh my God. Oh my God. You would not believe this.
Yeah, no, it's insane. So it's a lesser known cult. I mean, at least it wasn't well known to the 6 people that I asked. So if you do know about it, you're probably like a little bit smarter than those 6 people. I'm just saying. And me included, because I had quite literally never heard of this until Steve was like, oh, you should look into it. And then it was insane. You'll see what I mean.
I didn't even know any of the details that you were talking about. Like, I literally only knew the basic premise of it. And even then, that does not even begin to describe what she's about to explain.
Okay, so let's jump into it. So if you're a tea drinker in the USA, at least, you've more than likely actually consumed the tea that was produced by this cult. If you've ever had a hard time falling asleep and you decide to reach for a good old Sleepytime tea, or if you've ever had a cold and you reach for their chamomile tea, there's a good chance you've partaken in the product of a cult. You see, Celestial Tea Brand was founded in 1969 when some hikers handpicked herbs in the Rocky Mountains and decided, you know what, we're founding a company. So the founder, Mo Siegel, is the one that handpicked these herbs, and he was the president until they merged with Kraft. But then afterwards, they were actually able to buy back the company from Kraft, and then Siegel, he took over as CEO once again. So prior to 1969, the teas that were served in the USA and Britain typically were made of the Pollen Camellia sinensis. I had that right. Why did I second guess it? And they weren't overall just herbal. It was just that like specific plant. So when Mo Siegel hiked and picked those herbs to start the tea company, this was revolutionary because keep in mind, they didn't have like all the flavors and variants of tea. They just had like one plant. That was tea. Oh my God, is that what they've dumped into the harbor?
No. What they dumped into the harbor specifically was like the black tea that came out of like from the East India Company. So
Darn.
no, it's a completely different thing. And that whole reason that they even did that in the first place is because the British government initially they tried to lower the taxes on tea in order to get people to stop smuggling in illegal Dutch tea. And the smugglers operating there out of Boston Harbor were like, this is stupid. We don't want this. That's going to cause us to lose money. And also part of the whole thing with no taxation or representation. So dump the tea in the harbor. Different tea. And it's not chamomile. So it definitely did not calm people down at all.
Oh my God. Okay, so they started like a revolutionary tea company for the US, and the hikers harvested enough herbs for 500 pounds of a tea blend in 1969. So this tea blend was named Mo's 36 herb tea, and it was a mix of chamomile, spearmint, and a few other plants. As for the name of the company, they ended up naming it after Lucina Zeising's flower name. And yeah, I didn't explain it, but this group of friends were flower children. And essentially, flower children were young people, typically in their 20s, who back in the 60s embraced a countercultural lifestyle characterized by peace, love, and nonconformity.
They were hippies.
Yeah. So they rejected social norms, they advocated for civil rights, they were super anti-war, and they strongly supported environmentalism. And this particular group really liked tea.
Just like an environmentalist to go and destroy a bunch of plants so that you can turn them into a product for people to drink.
That's literally what my first thought was. I was like, oh, so you're just going to pick herbs from the Rockies? That's not very environmentalist of you.
Obviously, we're joking.
Yeah,
we're joking, obviously, but it was funny.
It's a little bit ironic, a little bit. So now you're probably asking, Gabby, what the fuck does any of this have to do with a cult?
Gabby, what the fuck does any of this have to do with a cult?
Okay, well, you didn't have to actually ask, but let me tell you. This is enough about tea. It's time for strange religious beliefs. So it all begins with a book, as it usually does.
Bible.
Kinda. So remember how I said that the tea company was probably named after one of the friends' flower names? Well, it may have also been called Celestial Seasonings because of the influence of a New Age Bible known as the Urantia book. So I looked it up. Some people say Urantia and some people say Urantia. And I'm just going to go with Urantia because I saw that way more Uran. You know what I'm saying? Urantia. So the thing about this book is, according to the Inverse article that really broke this news, it was called a, quote, an epochal revelation authored solely by celestial beings. And it touches upon everything from mind control to an entire eugenics plot to eliminate the inferior races of our great nation. And y'all, that is a direct quote from the article. And I was like, okay, they must be making it up. They're trying to be dramatic for clicks.
There's no way anyone on the internet would ever do that, Gabby. No.
But let me tell you, it gets worse.
Hey, nice shirt plug.
I know. Okay. So what is this Urantia anyway? Well, it is a 4.3 pound, 2,097 page tome that was published in 1955. And it is a modified Seventh-day Adventist text that was allegedly communicated to a man who was put into kind of a trance to communicate with aliens. And funny thing is, I was raised Seventh-day Adventist and we never had aliens. So I don't know, man. I don't know where they got this. Now, I did find the Urantia Foundation page that you too can look up. But I will be grabbing a lot of this history from the Inverse article because it is a pretty good article and it's really well researched. And I did fact check by going to the Urantia Foundation website, which you can do too if you really want to fall into this. They have the entire book on there, and then they also have their entire history, Q&As, you name it. And then if you go to YouTube, there's videos. Y'all, I was in deep. I really was in deep. So the story that they chose to stick with is that it was written by a man who aliens, supernatural entities, celestial communicators, whatever you guys want to call them, they were written, they communicated with him. So he was kind of in a trance. And so he wrote the book for this superhuman, non-human entity. Which means that the book can actually be downloaded for free since they insist it was a superhuman entity and not a human. So it can't be protected by copyright. So if you have a free month or two, maybe read it and email me your thoughts. I will be waiting patiently. That is your homework because I would love to read the entire thing, but it is 2,097 pages long. So we just kind of skimmed.
That is extensive. Okay, we've read a lot of different things here that is truly incredibly extensive. Doesn't make sense.
I know. So the reality, though, is that the book was more than likely written in the early 1900s by a psychiatrist named William Sadler, and he probably just used it as a vessel for his racist ideas. Because I guess back then, if you had racist ideas, you just started a religion or a cult. Sounds about right. So if you go to the Urantia Foundation's website, there's an entire section about like everything to do with it. And that's where a lot of the backstory of the book comes from as well. So apparently for years before the papers were received, the stage was set by the unseen alien friends to set the stage for communication before they could give the papers, because they had to lay the groundwork of like belief systems and challenging the belief systems and the authority and the things that were already been established before, they lay onto them 2,097 pages of insanity. So then when they were able to do it, they introduced many new ideas on cosmology and philosophy. And I'm just going to copy these and paste them here. So they are a new concept of a far-flung cosmos.
Okay.
Millions of other inhabited planets.
Seems reasonable.
Introduction to scores of different and varied echelons of celestial personalities.
Got it.
Confirmation of evolutionary origin of humankind, even of an evolutionary cosmos. Intimation of multiple creator deities. Tentative testing of our theologic concepts. So patient determination of how far we might possibly go in the direction of modifying our theologic beliefs and philosophical opinions. So basically they were just like challenging everything, Without realizing it, over a period of 20 years, our fundamental religious views and attitudes had been considerably changed because of everything they were learning from all of these like supernatural entities. They
were getting like messages and changing how they viewed about things about the entire world.
It's still based with like Adam, Eve, and all of the cast, essentially. You'll see what I mean. So they had been familiarized with such terms as the first source and center, Havona, super universes, and the supreme being. But they had like meager ideas as to the real meaning of these names. And so the supernatural entities kind of explained that to kind of broaden their knowledge. They also heard about words as master spirit, outer space, and power directors. But again, they didn't know the meaning, so had to lay the groundwork for that. They heard about thought adjusters, but the concept of the meaning of the term was also vague and indefinite. They got a fuzzy concept of the Morontia level of existence, but they never heard the word Morontia used until the papers started. So the midwayers were real to them. So they were the ones who they talked with during the contacts, essentially. So the supernatural entities that were talking to them were midwayers. And so they understood that the secondary midwayers supervised these contacts. So they heard from some things about Lucifer, like his rebellion, but they got little information about Adam and Eve. And then they also got the impression that there were special reasons for Jesus's bestowal on Urantia, but they had little to no idea to the nature of the unrevealed reasons. Basically, everything in the Bible had to be restructured, if that makes sense.
I mean, to be fair, that's kind of what does end up happening with religious texts, where they have to be put together in the first place. But they're saying that they got new information from celestial beings and then used that information to completely restructure everything again.
Yeah, because they were telling them about like the cosmos, about the contacts, about Lucifer's rebellion. They learn about Jesus' life and teachings, but they were very cautious about the introduction of any new concepts regarding Michael's Urantia bestowal of all of the Urantia revelation. The Jesus papers were the biggest surprise to them, essentially.
I'm sure it was a big surprise to everyone, yes.
Okay. And they also learned about the core of the finality. So they did pick up that hazy idea that paradise might be the destination of surviving mortals. So it's the same, but very, very significantly different. You'll see what I mean.
Everybody shush! William Shatner has something to say.
Cat and Jethro, box of oddities.
What do you do when the woman you love dies? Well, of course you dig her up and you live with her.
Aww.
The show examines weird things.
There are plenty of old photographs from this time period of children out in the streets playing in and among the dead horse carcasses.
Oh, I miss those days. Things used to be so much simpler.
Cat and Jethro.
Then there's the urine wheel, which sounds like a really bad game show.
Thing done weird things.
Wheel of urine!
Cat Cat and Jethro, Box of Oddities. That is really mysterious.
Join Kat and Jethro Gilligan Toth for the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected as they lift the lid and cautiously peer inside the Box of Oddities.
The Webby Award-winning Box of Oddities podcast from Airwave Media.
Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara's podcast from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
Mary Astor has been keeping a diary.
Mary writes everything down.
And so this torrid affair with George S. Kaufman is chronicled on a daily basis.
In great detail. And Ike pulls out a box and gives McAllister a ring saying, here's something to remember me by. This article caused Daryl Zanuck to hit the roof.
Actress Ruth Roman followed that up with playing a foil to Betty Davis in Beyond the Forest. I mean, if you can stand toe-to-toe with her, boy.
And she does, because she plays the daughter of the man that Betty Davis kills out on the hunting trip.
And it's directed by King Vidor, so he's no slouch.
How do you go wrong with that?
Yeah.
Speaking of the Oscars, talking about what I call beginner's luck, it's all about the actors and actresses who won an Oscar on their very first film.
Get your fix of old Hollywood from Steve and Nan on the podcast from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
And as these different ideas were communicated by the alien friends to the humans, they spent about 20 years giving all of this information before they supplied the papers themselves. So those initial ideas were said to be super helpful in changing the previous ideas of religion and the foundational, like that all of the foundational members had. And the contacts were all different at this time, though. So they didn't have communication with any superhuman entity that had the same personality twice. So each time they would talk to one, it was like a completely different one. So they started holding night vigils, which they did this in order to discuss religious matters. And at first it is said that those who attended these were not aware that they were talking to a supernatural being. Like they just thought, oh, we're hanging out and we're getting answers to these questions. But then during one of the vigils, one of the sleeping subjects who was used as a communication vessel, they said, quote, if you only knew what you are in contact with, you would not ask such trivial questions. You would rather ask questions that might elicit answers of supreme value to the human race. And because of that, they started asking questions that no human would know the answers to.
Okay, can we be real here for a second? If you actually got in contact with some kind of supernatural entity or being or something out there, would you really ask serious questions? Because the reason I say this is like, yes, at some point you probably would, but I know I personally would just start making jokes. You're looking at me right now. I understand that. I'm getting a lot of judgment at the moment that I'm saying this.
I just have some curiosity about the parts.
Of the parts?
The part.
Of the universe?
No, the parts of the aliens. You know, the parts.
Yes. Okay. Now, see, that's also true. I probably would have asked other really dumb things, but pertaining to everyday life. I genuinely might just ask if they know the secrets of the universe when certain seasons of anime that stopped being released years ago are going to come out.
Why would they know that?
Because they're celestial beings. Why would they not know this?
Okay. Well, good thing anime.
Do they know how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Those are not like groundbreaking information that they would have. I'm pretty sure like you can ask them, what's at the core of the earth? Maybe they'll know that.
An egg.
Okay. Wasn't that the moon in Doctor Who?
I think it was, yeah, that the moon was some kind of like giant egg for a creature or something.
That was Doctor Who, right?
I'm pretty sure that was Doctor Who, yeah.
It sounds like it was a typical Doctor Who shenanigan. Would he count as a celestial being?
For some, probably, actually.
Okay, we got way off topic. Wow. Okay, so these people decided to ask questions, but the people who put forth the list of questions, these were known as the Forum. And this forum put together a list of 4,000 questions for the supernatural entities to answer. According to William Sadler, the forum was originally composed of some of his old psych patients because initially it was just going to be a place for him to give talks on psychic phenomena and mental hygiene. But then it quickly expanded to doctors, lawyers, dentists, farmers, housewives, and a lot of other people from all walks of life joined later on. So during his talks, though, on psychic phenomena and mental hygiene, he revealed that most of his interactions with psychic phenomena were frauds, except for two. And that's what really got their attention. So he started telling them about the interactions with the supernatural entity that he had been having. And so, I mean, obviously it get them hooked. This guy was like one of the top psychiatrists of his time. They're like, heck yeah. Especially since if you want to really get people to trust you, you need to bring up like a bunch of people you don't trust, you know, like, oh yeah, this was super shady. I don't think it's a reasonable thing. And then they're like, except for this one person. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. No, I know
like
exactly what you mean.
Enough information there. So they're like, oh, they know how to recognize the real thing. You know, I don't know. Very smart of him to do.
It's true. Like if you're calling out, like if you can distinguish then between what's false, theoretically, then you should be able to distinguish what is real. Real, air quotes. Definitely so many air quotes when saying any of this.
So this forum, once it was established, decided that they would then ask questions about the origin of the cosmos, deity, creation, mankind, and everything that they thought would be of value to humanity. And within a week, hundreds of questions were submitted, and answers to these questions were given by the supernatural entity. The entire operation worked like clockwork. After the first set of papers were given, there were 57 pages. But since there were so many more unanswered questions, every Sunday an Urantia paper would be read, and then the next Sunday, new questions would be given. It took years, but eventually 196 Urantia papers were received and combined into the Urantia book. So the entire group of the forum started out very open at first, because no important information was really given. Before the papers were acquired, there was absolutely no need for secrecy. They were all just doing a little side quest, you know? However, after the Urantia papers were given to the group, they decided that caution should be taken and the group should become closed off. Members then had to sign pledges of secrecy, and they were prohibited from discussing the papers with anyone that wasn't a member of the group. So
sure.
Do you remember when we covered the psychology of cults, how there was an inner circle typically?
Yeah, there always has to be. The moment that the big secrets start to get revealed, well, not everyone can know this. So then the inner
circle can control the narrative of the rest of the people. You see how this got set up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they can control exactly what everyone believes because they're the ones who know everything. They're the ones to be trusted. So then to make things even more formal, membership tickets were given out in September 1925 to 30 members of the forum. These initial members had the task of managing the writing of the Urantia papers, and once the group became closed, they were the only people that were allowed to talk to the contacts and assist with receiving the communications.
Oh, yes. They're the only ones that are able to do this.
Now, you're probably wondering, okay, but who the fuck is this contact that was receiving the messages from the supernatural entities? Well, the name of that person is never actually revealed, but the author of Urantia, the Great Cult Mystery, a man by the name of Martin Gardner, he came to the conclusion that the writer was more than likely Sadler's brother-in-law, a man by the name of Wilfred Custer. So Gardner came to that conclusion because Sadler had been duped by other channelers in the past, but he believed that his brother-in-law was the real thing. Also, side note, one of the other channelers that Sadler had been duped by was Ellen White, who was the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist.
Which was the church that you got raised in.
And Ellen White was like, she was in everything, okay? Every single thing we did, my dad was like, well, the prophet Ellen White. Oh my God, I was not expecting it to be so closely bound to that.
That is really messy. I feel like we could do an entire little mini thing on this is this lady and what she did.
I do not want to do an episode. I feel like I'm too closely, because it's like the foundational forming beliefs of religion to me as a child was based off of Ellen White. So it's just a lot of like,
To be fair, here's the thing. I was raised Catholic. Like that's the entire point.
And but Catholicism has been around forever.
Yeah, I understand that. But when you look at the origin of where Catholicism begins to differentiate from the other kinds of like variants that you'd see of Christianity, and the whole thing, how it arose out of Eastern Orthodoxy and the 5 pentarchs, and how the pentarch of Rome was the one who was the Pope and supposed to be the leader among all of them. But then after the whole thing that happened with Rome, the Pope sought to get a new backer, so he sided with Charlemagne, and Charlemagne basically cemented his authority so that the Pope had control of large swaths of central Italy, and it just completely changed the dynamic because I kid you not, this is part of it here, he found an ancient manuscript that basically gave him authority over all of this stuff. That is like one of the foundational things that it's like that he was supposed to be in charge of. But
Interesting. So it's like all religion is kind of...
Every single part is going to have something that is weird or twisted, and some more than others, to be sure. This is one of those ones at the moment that you start to bring prophecy and all of it, though. That's where it gets really messy.
So you're probably wondering why they never revealed who wrote the Urantia papers. Well, the celestial revelators, they didn't want any human being or name associated with the Urantia book. They want the book to be completely free from all mortal connections. So unlike the Bible, they didn't want to run into the issue of like saints or prophets. They didn't want like the book of Mark and the book of John. They didn't want any of that. They wanted no human names to their story. So that's why they never revealed who the contact was.
Right. Not because then they wouldn't have to question any of it for where it actually came from.
I mean, you know. So side note, oh, okay. Yeah, this is me talking about Ellen White. I did actually write it in here. That's so funny.
Explain. I do want to hear more about this. Please.
No, I was just talking about that she was the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the creator of a whole lot of things, my anxiety as a child. Because let me tell you, she wrote some fun things about the end of the world and about like Seventh-day Adventists being like the people who were targeted and hunted down. And oh my God, let me tell you, my anxiety through the roof as a child. Like there was no rhyme or reason for this.
I did look something up in it, and apparently Seventh-day Adventist. I thought that it was smaller. It's not.
No, it's pretty big.
It's
just
the
not
7th largest Protestant religion in the world.
Yeah,
it's like 22 million people.
It's not huge in the US, but in places like Trinidad and it's massive. It's huge. It's a lot. Okay. A lot of people have never heard of it though in the US. Like when you say Seventh-day Adventist, they're just like, what? And I'm like, nothing. I'm Methodist. I just go Methodist.
Which Methodist is so different than what 7 days.
Well, that's what when I got to the US and I was like a full adult, I became Methodist because I was like, this is way more chill. No one's freaking out.
Anyway, continue.
Okay. So you're probably wondering though how this all connects back to the tea brand. Well, here's what our company that is totally not connected to a cult did.
No one hates history, they just haven't found the right teacher yet. Or in this case, a nerdy best friend who loves to tell you all about world history, women's history, and weird history. Hi, I'm TK, the creator of For the Love of History podcast, a place for people who want to learn more but don't know where to start, and history lovers who want to break from the mainstream. From rat trials to warrior women, we cover topics from every country and era. Whether you're a history expert or just starting out, there's a place for you here in the Time Machine. So join me every Friday on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube for a brand new topic. See you there. Bye.
Throughout history, royals across the world were notorious for incest. They married their own relatives in order to consolidate power and keep their blood blue. But they were oblivious to the havoc all this inbreeding was having on the health of their offspring. From Egyptian pharaohs marrying their own sisters to the Habsburgs' notoriously oversized lower jaws, I explore the most shocking incestuous relationships and tragically inbred individuals in royal history. And that's just episode 1. On the History Tea Time podcast, I profile remarkable queens and LGBTQ+ royals, explore royal family trees, and delve into women's medical history and other fascinating topics. I'm Lindsay Holiday, and I'm spilling the tea on history. Join me every Tuesday for new episodes of the History Tea Time podcast, wherever fine podcasts are enjoyed.
So you remember Mo Siegel, the founder of the tea company? Well, he's the current president of the Urantia Foundation. The thing is, the same year that he hiked for herbs and started his tea company is the same year that he discovered the Urantia book. He's quoted as saying, "I thought that was just the goofiest thing I'd ever heard. But after I read it, I was not concerned about who had written it or how it had been written because it was so powerful. It was so impactful to him that it was a major reason why he even started the company Celestial Seasonings." He said, after studying the teachings in the Urantia book, I knew that it would feel selfish and wasteful to simply focus on material success. So as a young man, when I began thinking of what I could do to make a living, I immediately turned to the health food industry. The ideas in the book were the inspiration for the uplifting quotes we print on the side of our tea boxes and on our tea bags. So the Urantia book guided many of the decisions that they made at the company, and any arguments that they had at the company, they used it, like quotes from it, to settle them. And that's confirmed by employees that the book was the guide for the company's morals back in the day. But the thing is, according to the Inverse article, even though Mo Siegel says that everyone is equal in the sight of God and race should be irrelevant, the text of the book itself is incredibly racist. Now, I know this was written in a very racist time, so I thought, okay, this can't be that bad. A lot of books were written in a racist time. But boy, was I wrong.
There's a difference between something being written in a racist time and actually having dogmatic religious beliefs surrounding racial and other identity.
So you're going to see why William Sadler and why the book is the way that it is, because William Sadler is the person who brother-in-law or he himself wrote this book. And the people he was connected to back in the day were some fun people, some very fun people. I don't know. It's like, as I was writing this, everything was so connected. It was blowing my mind. It was very fun to write. Okay, so here are the things from the article that really stood out. So the book says that about 500,000 years ago, 6 colored races appeared on Urantia, which is Earth. They were red, orange, blue, yellow, green, and indigo. And paper 51 of the Urantia book is quoted as saying, quote, "The earlier races are somewhat superior to the later. The red man stands far above the indigo, which is the black race, and each succeeding evolutionary manifestation of a distinct group of mortals represents variation at the expense of the original endowment.
Dear God.
The yellow race usually enslaves the green, while the blue man, which is referencing Caucasians, subdues the indigo, which is the black. Paper 51 also says that, quote, "The inferior and unfit are largely eliminated. It seems that you ought to be able to agree upon the biologic disfellowshipping of your more markedly unfit, defective, degenerate, and antisocial stocks." End quote.
Oh my dear God.
Hold on. To quote you, but wait, it gets worse.
Oh, dear Lord.
So, according to Gardner, the author of the book we mentioned previously, the Urantia book also says that on every planet across every universe, fair-skinned, blue-eyed aliens named Adam and Eve appear to upstep the natives, and when their children procreate with the planet's inhabitants, the inferior stock are eliminated and one purified race, language, and religion will be established. Amazing. So, you see where this is going. Now, this process described above happens on every single planet where Adam and Eve appear, but on Earth or Urantia, it did not happen properly. They messed up and they did not purify to one singular, race. So the Urantia has, quote, they had to work out their planetary problem of race improvement by other and largely human methods of adaptation and control. According to the Urantia text, many diseases exist because of unfit people, and the diseases remain because the unfit people have not been eliminated.
Dear God.
But wait, it gets worse. Paper 70 of the Urantia book says, quote, "Biologic renovation of the racial stocks, the selective elimination of inferior human strains tend to eradicate many mortal inequalities." And this is pretty much just eugenics.
So it's if we kill off everyone who's different than us, everyone will be equal.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The article that I was referencing compiled all of these. So I started thinking, there's no way. I was like, okay, whoever wrote this obviously doesn't like this foundation. They don't like this book. So they're just saying stuff. So I looked up each paper and then, searched it. And they dead ass wrote this down. They did. They wholeheartedly put it into words.
Even for the 1800s, that is a level
what
that
did
is
Trump
not...
say? And he was like, "No way." And I was like, "Way."
Oh God. See, this is funny. I'm laughing right now. But I'm not laughing at oh, ha, 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 this is funny. I'm laughing at, this is so goddamn ridiculous.
But the thing is though, in the 1960s, people were reading this and being like, yes, these beliefs are life-changing.
This is 20 years after the events that had happened already in Europe. Not
That's
to mention,
crazy.
okay, so a lot of the stuff what they talk about here with the really crazy racial thing, A lot of that originated out of like the late 1800s going into the early 1900s. Europe, right? And if you look at the wild esoteric shit out of like Austria and what was going on there.
You're going to make me spoil it. William Sadler wrote three different books. And when you read the name of the books, it'll all make sense because they're in here. I promise you. Like, let me tell you, bruh. So why would this book be so heavily influenced by eugenics? Well, William Sadler, the guy behind the entire thing, was a psychiatrist. And I don't know if you picked up on that before from all the talks on mental health that he mentioned he gave his patients. But he wasn't just any old psychiatrist, though. He was actually the most well-known one of his time. The thing is, Sadler would not have had his start in psychiatry without none other than Dr. John H. Kellogg. Which, John Harvey Kellogg, known for his insane views on masturbation, which, Steve, go ahead. I know you're dying to tell us.
Okay, so there's a whole thing that originated between like the Kellogg brothers. I'm not going to go into all this whole thing with the long story details about it. But basically, yes, Kellogg, founder of like Kellogg cereal, whole thing, if you remember Kellogg cornflakes, they had some pretty wild beliefs, such as that masturbation specifically was something that would actually hurt you, like it was something that was a sign of a very bad person and that it would degrade your body. And he wanted to come up with a variety of different techniques to stop people from masturbating.
As one does.
And there ended up being a whole disagreement between, I believe it was him and his brother, because it was actually two Kellogg brothers that would go on to found like the Kellogg whole thing with cereal. And one of them, I can't remember which one in this case, one of them was like, okay, well, the cereal that we've been making specifically in order to be able to feed to our psych patients that are crazy, because they, in a mental hospital where they needed to give people something that was very simple and easy to digest. So that was the cornflakes and that sort of thing. There's no sugar. There's no anything like that. I believe it was his brother, the one that was more business minded and not as religiously crazy, that was like, okay, but what if we took these cornflakes and we added sugar to them? And he was like, no, that's wrong. That's evil. That's something that is bad for the body. We're not going to do that. Yes, but we could make money. And it caused a whole disagreement between them, which eventually ended up with them splitting apart and one brother actually going on to found like the actual Kellogg cereals of today.
So that is not the craziest thing this John H. Kellogg has done, because he was also a notorious eugenicist and he founded the, quote, Race Betterment Foundation, a foundation whose goal was to call attention to the dangers which threaten the race. What a guy.
The race. So when he says the race, he means white people.
Yeah. And so with all of his close work with Kellogg, William Sadler, our Urantia Foundation founder, he actually published 3 eugenicist books. These were, the first one was Longheads and Roundheads, or What's the Matter with Germany, 1918. The second one was Racial Decadence, an examination of the causes of racial degeneration in the United States. This was in 1922.
Go figure.
Then The Truth About Heredity, 1927. That one was pretty chill in comparison to the others.
We were talking about at that point a peak thing for eugenics within the United States. Yeah.
And the Urantia book got a lot of inspiration from these 3 previous books that he had written. Sadler expressed views such as, quote, the unfit should be sterilized and that some races are more moral than others, end quote. He also had views on interracial marriage, saying that it was to be deplored when one of the races would be inferior as compared with the other, which happens to be the biologic fact as concerns the white and, he says, Negro races in this country. So that's where the commenters who won't shut up on our videos come from. That checks out. Because, you've seen those, right? Where they're like, actually, it is actually like abuse that you guys would have a kid together because that kid is going to suffer because they're going to be genetically inferior. Like, what?
We've had people actually say that to us.
Yeah, people say the worst things possible in our comment sections. And I understand now they were probably reading this man's books. So, yeah. So William Sadler wasn't the only member of his family with these views. His wife, Lena Sadler, published a paper where she called for mandatory sterilization. She called for the use of eugenics with the belief that it would eliminate 90% of crime, insanity, feeble-mindedness, Mormonism, etc. So, these books are super old and were written in a different time, as I said before, so maybe the views are different. Mormonism rebranded to be less racist, right? So maybe Mo Siegel, our tea company founder, made things less racist, right?
Well, I would hope so, especially considering how, the Mormon Church did. Oh my God, you're not kidding.
So Siegel himself wrote in the 20 most asked questions, quote, "Unfortunately, several factors hinder progress toward the development of a disease-free world. The laws of genetics are immutable and form the physical cornerstone of evolution. At the present time, mankind loses about as much progress as it makes by ignoring eugenics." And then in 2010, there was an email newsletter that went out. 2010, okay? It went out to committed members it wasn't posted on the website. It had to go straight to the members that said that they convened a panel on eugenics that included an actual geneticist, like researcher, which is wild because A, this is 2010, and B, a scientist, dude. An actual scientist, dude.
And this was in 2010.
Yeah. As for the tea company, Celestial Seasonings, well, we don't know if its business is still being guided by the Urantia book. It's highly unlikely. Mo Siegel and John Hay, the two founders, they left the company in 2002 and 1985 respectively, so they haven't had anything to do with it for quite a while. The company is pretty much credited with invented a new category of food and wellness known as natural health foods, and it has been pretty successful. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the original founders anymore, thank goodness, because it was bought up by another big company, and now it's a worldwide establishment. So I highly doubt they have anything to do with this.
This whole
anymore.
thing started by hippies,
who
super racist cult hippies. Then they founded a company that became an international conglomerate.
Yeah,
that's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the story of how the company responsible for the amazing goodness that is Sleepytime Tea, because that tea does hit. What is in it? I'm sure they're putting something in there, like a full-on sedative.
Well, as we would say in KFC, the 36 herbs and spices to put you to sleep.
But it's also linked to a eugenics happy cult. So I don't know what a rabbit hole we went down.
So, hold on. You were saying that they had this whole thing with the geneticist even in 2010.
I haven't looked into it past that because quite frankly, I'm afraid. Also, I'm pretty sure no one's going to be wilding past 2010. Even the 2000s were a weird time where people were just the worst. And now they kind of mellowed out a little bit in 2010s, right?
I mean, I guess so, but I don't really. Here's the thing. When you have people that aren't challenged or talked to about things or aren't exposed, you could say, then it just allows things to proliferate over time. So really, I don't know if I look this up right now. For anyone who is listening to this right now, go and look more into this. Go and check and see what it is that they are up to today, because this is the mystery of how it is that we got here and what is happening. But look at what else is happening and see how that goes.
What a time. What a time. But yeah, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.